Sometimes love doesn't arrive with loud words, it shows up quietly, in the small things, in the silent prayers, in the way someone chooses you again and again, even when the world feels heavy. And today, I just want to say something simple, something honest. I am caring for you, not because I have to, not because it's easy, but because somewhere along the way, your happiness became a part of my responsibility. Your smile became a reason I try harder. Your pain became something I wish I could carry instead of you. I care about the way your day goes. I care about the battles you never talk about. I care about the version of you the world doesn't always see. This isn't about grand promises or perfect moments. It's about being there consistently, quietly, faithfully, even on ordinary days, even when words feel small, because real love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stays. Never thought I would become the kind of person who cries for someone in silence. The kind of person who sits in the middle of a crowded world and still feels completely alone because one person is missing. It's strange how love changes the way time moves. Minutes feel like hours when you're not okay, and hours feel like seconds when you smile. And somewhere between those moments, I realize something I never planned to admit out loud. I am crying for you, not because you asked me to, not because anyone told me I should, but because caring about you became something that lives in me like breathing. Natural, constant, unavoidable. You became the quiet thought that stays in the background of every day. The invisible thread that pulls my heart in your direction, even when I try to pretend I'm strong. I wish I could tell you that I am always brave, that I never feel lost, that I never sit in silence wondering if you're okay. But the truth is softer than that, more human than that. I worry about you more than I admit. I feel your absence more than I show, and sometimes the weight of missing you becomes too heavy to hold inside, so it escapes as tears I never planned to cry. It happens in the smallest moments, when a song plays and reminds me of your voice, when the night becomes too quiet, and my thoughts start saying your name, when I see something beautiful and my first instinct is to wish you were there to see it with me. That's when my heart stops pretending to be strong. That's when I feel everything at once. And that's when I realize how deeply you exist inside my world. People think crying is weakness. They think tears are something to hide, but they don't understand what it means to feel this deeply. They don't understand that sometimes tears are just love with nowhere to go, that sometimes the heart becomes too full, and the only way it knows how to survive is to let the emotion fall quietly down your face while nobody is watching. I don't cry loudly. I don't cry in front of crowds. I cry in the quiet corners of my life, in the spaces between conversations, in the late hours when the world sleeps and the truth becomes louder. I cry in the moments when memories show up uninvited and sit beside me like old friends who refuse to leave, because loving someone isn't always laughter and warm sunlight. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's uncertainty. Sometimes it's wondering if the person you care about feels the same invisible connection that keeps you awake at night. Sometimes it's the ache of not knowing how to fix things you wish you could protect. There are nights when I stare at the ceiling and think about the things I wish I could say, the things I wish I could change, the moments I replay in my mind, hoping they might somehow turn out differently if I think about them long enough. And every time, the same feeling returns, the same quiet truth that refuses to leave. I miss you more than words can carry. And it's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's soft, gentle, persistent, like rain that falls for hours without anyone noticing until everything is soaked. I cry because I care. I cry because your happiness matters to me in a way I never expected. I cry because the idea of you hurting somewhere in this world feels unbearable. I cry because even when we are not speaking, not laughing, not sharing the same moment, you still exist in every part of my day. Sometimes I wonder if you would be surprised to know this, if you would believe me, if you would understand how someone can feel so deeply without saying it every day. But love isn't always spoken. Sometimes it lives in the silence. Sometimes it shows up in the things we never send, the words we never say, the tears we never let anyone see. There is something strangely beautiful about caring this much, even when it hurts, even when it feels heavy, because it means my heart still knows how to feel. It means you changed something inside me that the world never managed to touch. You reached a place in me that I didn't even know existed until it started calling your name, and I wish I could promise myself that I'll stop crying soon, that one day it won't feel this intense. But love doesn't follow promises, it doesn't follow schedules, It doesn't disappear just because you ask it politely. It stays, it lingers, it grows roots in places you never expected and refuses to leave. I cry because memories are powerful, because moments don't disappear just because time moves forward, because laughter leaves echoes, because smiles leave fingerprints on the heart, because once someone becomes important to you, they don't simply become ordinary again. You change the way I see small things. You change the way I listen to silence. You change the way my heart reacts to absence. And now every quiet moment carries a piece of you, even when you're not standing in front of me. There are days when I pretend I'm okay, when I laugh and talk and move through life like everything is perfectly normal. And maybe from the outside it looks that way. Maybe no one notices the small pauses, the distant thoughts, the quiet sighs that escape when no one is paying attention. But inside, there is always a space shaped like you. I never expected love to feel like this. I thought it would be simple, joyful, easy to explain. But instead, it became something deeper, something quieter, something that exists beneath the surface of everything else. It became the reason I care more, the reason I feel more, the reason I sit in silence sometimes and let the emotions flow because holding them inside feels impossible. I cry because you matter, because the world feels slightly different with you in it, because the idea of losing your presence feels like losing a piece of the sky I learned to look at every day. And even though tears fall, they don't come from regret, they don't come from anger, they come from love that doesn't know how to disappear. Love that keeps showing up even when it has nowhere to stand. Love that continues quietly, faithfully, patiently. There's a certain kind of vulnerability in admitting this and saying out loud that someone has this kind of effect on you. But hiding it doesn't make it less real. Silence doesn't make it smaller. If anything, it grows stronger in the quiet. I am crying for you because my heart refuses to pretend you don't matter. Because somewhere along the way you became part of my emotional gravity. The thing that pulls my thoughts back no matter how far they wander. And maybe one day the tears will slow down. Maybe one day the ache will soften. Maybe one day the distance won't feel so loud. But right now, in this moment, all I know is that caring about you feels as natural as breathing, as constant as time, as real as the quiet rhythm of a heart that keeps beating even when no one hears it. And sometimes the only honest thing left to do is to sit in the silence, let the emotions fall and accept that love, real love, doesn't always arrive as happiness. Sometimes it arrives as tears that refuse to stop, as memories that refuse to fade, as a feeling that refuses to leave even when the world keeps moving forward and everything keeps changing and the night keeps getting quieter and the thoughts keep getting louder and the heart keeps whispering your name in ways words never could, and the silence keeps stretching longer and longer until it feels like time itself is waiting for something it cannot explain. And I keep sitting, reholding feelings that don't know where to go and wishing that somehow, somewhere, you could feel the echo of everything I never learned how to say out loud and understand the quiet truth that lives behind every tear that falls and every breath that feels heavier than the last and every moment that stretches into the next without asking permission and every thought that begins and ends with you and every memory that refuses to fade and every hope that refuses to disappear and every fragile piece of love that continues to exist in the quiet spaces between heartbeats and every silent wish that keeps repeating itself in the dark, hoping that one day the distance between what is felt and what is spoken will finally disappear, and the weight of everything unspoken will finally find a place to rest, and the tears will finally understand why they were falling in the first place, and the heart will finally understand why it kept holding on for so long, and why even now it still refuses to let go of the simple truth that I am crying for you because loving you became part of who I am, and I never learned how to stop loving what feels like home, even when home feels far away, and the night feels endless, and the silence feels deeper than words, and the only thing left is this quiet feeling that continues growing without permission, and without limits, and without an ending, and without a final goodbye, and without a closing thought, and without a last sentence, and without a way to explain how something so quiet can feel so loud inside a heart that keeps holding on to you in ways that never needed words and never asked for answers, and never stopped believing that somewhere in the middle of all is silence. There is still a reason for every tear that keeps falling, and every breath that keeps remembering, and every moment that keeps waiting for something it cannot name, and every feeling that keeps returning no matter how far it tries to run, and every piece of love that keeps surviving even in the quiet spaces where no one else can see it and where the only sound left is the echo of everything I wish I could tell you if I ever found the courage to say it out loud, and if the world ever became quiet enough to listen, and if the distance ever became small enough to cross, and if the silence ever decided to finally let the truth speak, and if my heart ever stopped whispering your name long enough for me to pretend that none of this ever existed and that I never became the kind of person who sits in the quiet and cries for someone they cannot stop caring about and cannot stop missing and cannot stop loving in ways that continue long after the words run out and the night grows deeper and the world keeps moving without noticing the quiet storm that still lives inside me and refuses to rest and refuses to end and refuses to become anything less than the simple fragile truth that continues to exist here in the silence, waiting and feeling and remembering and hoping and still quietly crying for you. I used to believe that strength meant silence, that being strong meant holding everything inside, keeping your voice steady, your hands still, your heart hidden somewhere, safe where no one could see how deeply it actually feels. I thought love was supposed to make you fearless, untouchable, invincible in some quiet, heroic way. But the truth is softer than that. The truth is that love doesn't make you fearless. It makes you honest. And honesty sometimes arrives with trembling hands, heavy breathing, and tears that appear without asking for permission. There is something about missing someone that slowly reshapes the way you exist in the world. You start noticing how empty certain moments feel. You start noticing how loud silence can become. You start noticing how one person can be absent and somehow still present in everything at the same time. It's a quiet contradiction that doesn't ask to be understood. It just stays there, patient and persistent, like a shadow that follows you through every hour of the day. I never expected to feel this kind of quiet ache. I never expected that someone could become part of the rhythm of my thoughts without trying, that someone could exist in the background of every plan, every memory, every hope I didn't even realize I was building. It happened slowly, quietly, without dramatic moments or loud declarations, just small pieces of time stacking on top of each other, until suddenly your presence became part of the air I breathe. And now when I think about you, it feels like standing in the middle of a memory that refuses to fade. It feels like holding on to something invisible that still somehow has weight. It feels like trying to explain a feeling that doesn't belong to language. There are nights when the world feels too quiet, when the distractions disappear, and the truth shows up without warning. That's when the heart becomes honest. That's when the distance feels real. That's when emotions stop pretending to be patient and finally ask to be felt. I sit with those moments longer than I admit. I let the silence speak in ways words never could. I let the memories replay themselves like scenes from a movie I never asked to watch again but somehow can't stop remembering. And in those moments, the tears arrive gently, not as a storm, but as something softer, something quieter, something that feels less like pain and more like proof. Proof that you mattered, proof that you still matter, proof that the heart remembers even when the world keeps moving forward. It's strange how the smallest details become the loudest reminders. A song that sounds different now, a place that feels incomplete, a joke that doesn't land the same way anymore. Tiny things that no one else notices suddenly become reminders of everything I try not to think about during the day. People talk about moving on like it's a straight road, like it's something simple and clean and easy to explain. But the truth feels more complicated than that, more human than that. Some connections don't disappear just because time moves forward. Some emotions don't pack their bags and quietly leave. They stay, they soften, they change shape, but they don't disappear, and maybe they're not supposed to. Maybe some people enter your life to change the way your heart understands the world, to show you what it feels like to care deeply without needing a reason, to remind you that vulnerability is not weakness, that tears are not failure, that feeling deeply is not something to apologize for. Because crying for someone doesn't always mean sadness. Sometimes it means gratitude, sometimes it means memory, sometimes it means love that hasn't found a new place to live yet. I don't cry because everything is broken. I cry because something was real, because something mattered enough to leave a mark that time hasn't erased, because somewhere along the way you became part of the way I experience the world. I wish I could explain how quiet this feeling is. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention, it doesn't interrupt the flow of everyday life. It simply exists beneath the surface, like a steady heartbeat you only notice when you stop to listen. There's a certain kind of loneliness that only appears when you've experienced closeness, a silence that only exists after laughter, a distance that only feels heavy after connection. And in that quiet space, emotions become clearer than words. I think about the version of myself that existed before caring this deeply. That version felt simpler, lighter in a way that didn't understand the weight of missing someone, didn't understand how powerful a memory could be, didn't understand how love can continue quietly even when life moves in different directions. And sometimes I wonder if that version of me would recognize who I've become now. Someone who pauses at random moments because a memory showed up uninvited. Someone who hears your name in silence even when no one is speaking. Someone who learned that love doesn't always need an audience to be real. It's bling to realize how much space someone can take in your heart without trying, without asking, without even knowing, just by existing in a way that leaves a mark deeper than logic can explain. I don't regret feeling this way. Even the tears carry a kind of warmth, a reminder that my heart is capable of caring deeply, of holding on to moments, of remembering people who changed the way the world feels. Because the opposite of this wouldn't be peace. It would be emptiness. It would be never knowing what it feels like to care so much that silence becomes loud and distance becomes heavy and memories become vivid enough to bring tears without warning. And even though it hurts sometimes, I wouldn't trade the experience of loving deeply for the safety of feeling nothing. There's courage in admitting that someone affected you this much.